If I'm not the mind, if I'm just bare light, what am I thinking? Nothing. What do I need? Nothing. Who are my enemies? Nobody. Fear comes when the mind kicks in. As long as I'm a mind, a person, everybody's a person to me. The moment I stepped back from physicality, I realized everybody is that light. The day I finished my last assignment in college and went straight to the monastery and joined. That's how I became a monk. We have been born many times and we have died many times. And that's not good news. But the really important promise is here and now in this life. You can have possessions but not be possessed by the possessions. Well put. You can have things, just the things don't have you. Yes. Comfortable life right here and now means no progress. It must be pushing the envelope somewhere. It's a human limitation that we think if this is right everything else has to be wrong. In meditation, when we calm down, that's what the ego hates. This is how you thin out the ego. So we sit still, closing the eyes when we are ready. This is actually the first Know Thyself podcast with our new background set. Oh, I see. Yeah. We're making some changes. So, it's good to have you in the studio. Swami Ji, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for having me, Andre. I have been loving watching your talks and reading some of your books over the past few years, and the conversation today is one I'm very passionate about, and it's been very much so your life study. For people that don't know, what is Advaita Vedanta? Well, Advaita is a very ancient school of Indian non-dual spiritual philosophy. If you back up a little bit, the big picture kind, if you see the study of spirituality and philosophy in India, it's like a big project you can discern from all the way back long before the Buddha. This quest to know reality about the world, reality about ourselves. It was not like our modern scientific quest. Rather, it was a quest that there is something if we uncover that, if we realize that or find that out, then our life becomes fulfilled. So that was the quest. This quest, there it went by many names. Moksha, freedom, MTI, which means freedom, nirvana, Kaliya. There are multiple names and multiple traditions. Many of them were based on the Vedas, which are the root texts of Hinduism. Even those which are not directly based on the Vedas were often reactions to the Vedas, like the Jainism or Buddhism. And in the Vedas you have these texts called the Upanishads, which are the sort of the final, the highest spiritual teachings of the Vedas. And based on these Upanishads came multiple schools of what are now called Vedanta. Vedanta just means the end of the Vedas, and not in a literal sense as the end of the book, but also in the sense of the end teachings, the final teachings, or the highest teachings. But these Upanishads themselves were interpreted in a variety of ways. One of the ways, and one of the most well-known ways, is the way of Advaita Vedanta. Advaita just means non-dual, so non-dual Vedanta, it's a non-dual interpretation of the Upanishads. Based on the Upanishads, there is a text called the Brahma Sutras, and the most well-known text of Vedanta. I guess that's the one book everybody would have heard of in the world, the Gita, the Bhagavad Gita. So that is the textual basis and background of Advaita Vedanta, and it has continued down from that time onwards till today. It's a living tradition. There are millions who follow it, who study it, who practice it. There are thousands and thousands of monks also, like myself. I'm one of them, who have made it their lifelong pursuit to study, practice, live by and manifest this philosophy. So it's a living tradition. It has been for millennia. Its central teaching is radical. You are that in Sanskrit. You know, one beautiful thing about Vedanta, although there's an ocean of literature, but it can be expressed, the central teaching of Vedanta can be expressed very elegantly in half a verse. So there's a Sanskrit saying Brahma Jagata, which means Brahman alone is real. The world is an appearance and you are that ultimate reality. The sentient being is that ultimate reality. You can compress it further into a short sentence. You are that means you are that ultimate reality. That means if we were to really inquire and find out who or what we are, if we knew ourselves, we would discover something amazing. That's the promise. Something the greatest secret of all in fact the point of it all rather, other sentences are there in the Upanishads. Aam Brahmasmi I am Brahman. I am the ultimate reality. Brahma consciousness is the ultimate reality. I am Atma Brahma. This very self is the ultimate reality of the universe. You can compress it further into single words. Just the word Brahman, not the Brahman which is a caste in Hinduism. Brahman literally means the vast, the limitless. Sometimes in the Upanishads it's just called the word Pam which means complete or whole or limitless. Anandam which means limitless you can make it even shorter you can just say and if you unpack that the monosyllable Om you would get all of Vanta. You can make it even shorter just silence. They say the Vanta can be expressed as silence. So what is the promise that this way of knowing this end of knowledge or culmination of knowledge is providing? In essence, what is Jivan Mukti and what can by virtue of listening to this podcast can our audience community listeners hopefully get a bit of a glimpse into of that same goal or promise there? That's a good question and the promise is really big. Doesn't get any bigger than this. I can put it in two ways. One is the traditional way it is put in India. Not just for Advaita Vedanta but for all these paths, all these ancient paths. It's freedom from the cycle of birth and death. That's how life is understood in India and that's not peculiar to one school. All it's sort of axiomatic across all schools except the materialists who say everything ends at death. But other than that all other schools Advaita Vedanta the other schools of Vedanta, the Shah schools the Shakta schools the Buddhists the Jains the Sikhs, every shade of religion and philosophy in India they have sort of axiomatically said the description of life is this cycle of birth and death this is not our first time here and won't be our last. We have been here many times. We have been born many times and we have died many times. And that's not good news because we have been repeating this cycle of birth and death. And it's a limited existence. It's full of suffering and limitation and sorrow and struggle and a freedom from this cycle is possible. So that's seen as the ultimate goal. So now that's the way it is traditionally put in Advaita the result is moksha freedom from the cycle of birth and death. But if you want to put it in less theological terms if you will something much more universally acceptable when I came here to the West they warned me that this talk about the cycle of birth and death doesn't go down so easily in the West in America especially as it does in India because it's sort of axiomatic in India. But suppose one doesn't have those presuppositions. What can be put something in a form that is universally acceptable to everybody is the attainment of deep lasting happiness or bliss if you will and overcoming of suffering a deep solution to the problem of suffering the existential problem of human life. So basically it amounts to the same thing overcoming the cycle of transcending the cycle of birth and death and overcoming suffering. Basically the same thing. This is also the language in which the other schools are also put. Buddhism also the Buddha said life is suffering and there is a possibility of freedom from this suffering and that's what he called nirvana. Exactly in the same way says deep lasting fulfillment is possible in Sanskrit word ananda bliss is possible and freedom from suffering is possible and that's what it aims to deliver. This is the promise and this is sort of universally acceptable. This is the principle on which the United States was founded. The Declaration of Independence, the pursuit of happiness and of liberty and the right to life. So life, liberty, and happiness, if you put it in Vedantic terms, the pursuit of happiness is anand, the bliss. The pursuit of life would be eternal existence. That means freedom from death literally. And freedom, liberty, there was I don't know if the founding fathers made me meant it in a Vedantic sense, but they hit upon something very profound, very deep. Now, Vedanta also says that this realization is possible. It's not a post-mortem spirituality that you have to wait after death. After death you get to see God or after death you get to go to heaven. Quite possible and I do believe that's possible. But the really important promise is here and now in this life. So that's the word you refer to. Jan Mti the Sanskrit word Jvan Mti means free while living in this body. So that's what the Advaita aims at. That is not common to all the schools, because some of the schools would say that you really cannot be perfect in this life. You have to die and be go to a higher state of existence. All that might be fine, but Vant, you know, it is that way. It is very, very practical. It says that what is there must be here too. There's a saying, if you have it here, you have it there. If you don't have it here, you won't have it there. So the enlightenment which you get here will serve you there. There means maybe after death or in heaven or wherever it is, that's so realization of this and living it in this life. Swami Vivekananda, he put it beautifully. He said basically spirituality is the manifestation of the divinity already within us. So the divinity already within us, our real nature, to know it, and not just to know it but to live it, to manifest it. He put it in other words. He said my mission in life can be put in a few words. Vivekananda, he says it is to teach unto humanity their inner divinity and how to make it manifest in every movement of life. In our thought, in our emotion, in our speech, in our actions. So that is the promise. And Advaita Vedanta as a path within what you might say is the umbrella of Jnana Yoga as a vehicle towards self-realization. We all have our own individual constitution and maybe resonate towards specific paths, which I'm sure we could elaborate on, but there's something that has resonated so deeply within me, the path of Yin Yoga, to be able to experientially verify claims and in our real-time experience, and especially as an intellectually and analytically dominant society and culture, I think is a really beautiful pathway and in an opening of the door for people to start to examine the nature of self and reality, and you do that and you help guide people and in that as well, so beautifully. And so when you think about the epistemic orientation of Jnana Yoga, of the way in which we come to know, could you expand about that? Yes, so I'll just touch upon this. You just mentioned they are constitutions, or you hit upon something very deep there. One reason why a variety of paths is desirable. Well, there are two aspects to this. One is the nature of that ultimate reality. It could be, in fact, we hold that the nature of that ultimate reality which we are seeking, our ultimate reality and the reality of this universe. This is what Vedanta's inquiring and Vedanta's teaching is, that they are the two are the same. Our ultimate reality, what we truly are and what this universe truly is one and the same thing. In Vedantic language, its Atman is equal to Brahman. Atman means our inner self. Brahman is the reality of this universe. It's the same reality. So one thing is that the ultimate reality is so capacious that you can approach it in different ways. You can have different theologies and different philosophies, and all would be right. It's a human limitation that we think if this is right, everything else has to be wrong. This is something really beautiful about ancient India. Until today, it's part of Indian culture that there can be multiplicity of viewpoints, and it doesn't mean that one is right and everything else is wrong. They could all be right. In fact, we hold that they are all right also. That's from the perspective of the ultimate reality. But from our perspective, as you said, we are diverse. Human beings are of many kinds. The internal constitution. So it makes sense to have multiple pathways. Some more emotion-related, heart-related, some more intellect-related, some more action-oriented. Vand, in fact, was of the opinion that you should have all of them in your spiritual life. A balanced spiritual life should be intellectual, should be devotional, should be meditative, and should be action-oriented also. All of them can be and should be part of a wholesome spiritual life. All right. But now to your question about the epistemology of Jnana Yoga. Yes, you're right. It's extreme. I find it extremely attractive, and I see large numbers of people are drawn to that side of Jnana Yoga. Let's put it this way. All these paths work. But let's put it under three broad paradigms too. I'm just trying to bring out the uniqueness of Jnana Yoga. What makes it so special? One path of spirituality is something that is very common, immediately understood. You might call it the devotional path. There's a Sanskrit word for it, by love of God or love devotion. So if you see temples, churches, mosques, they're all devotional paths. Here we are told that there is an ultimate reality. Call it God or Vishnu or Shiva or Father in heaven or Jehovah or Allah. And how do we know that? If you ask an epistemic question, the answer would be you know it by tradition, by faith. And because your masters have told you so, because your religion tells you so, your holy book tells you so, the testimony of the saints and so on. So you know it that way. It's primarily a path of faith, and the way it is practiced is also, if you look closely, it is love, devotion, prayer, music, surrender, adoration. It's a worship of the other, the divine, as the other God. The problem with it's a beautiful path, and it's a genuine path. It has produced mistakes and genuinely enlightened people across the centuries, and it's the most common path, which is what you get when you come to religion first of all. But if you want to play the devil's advocate, especially in this day and age, we have never had so many atheists or agnostics ever in the history of humanity as we have today. Because in this path, because it's based on faith, it's possible to believe, it's possible to disbelieve. It's possible to believe otherwise. So yes, I believe in God, just not in the way as you do. Yes, I have my own holy book. You have your own holy book. The problem with faith is one may believe, one may not believe. One may believe differently. One may believe strongly or less strongly, and one may disbelieve. And because it's not immediately experiential, it's based for a long time on faith. Although ultimately it does culminate in experience, it can be doubted. And that's why you have all these this day and age. If you talk too much about God and faith and devotion and love, you're going to run up against, Richard Dawkins or Christopher Hitchens or his past, or Sam Harris and the militant atheists. You'll run up against your own sense of reason. This path, it does not tolerate questioning immediately. It is based on you have to start on faith. So this is the problem with this path, the path of belief, again genuine path. If you have belief, go for it, but this is the weakness of that, and if one is purely on a belief path, in the long run also there are problems. One's belief can be shaken. Life has a way of shaking you up. One's belief can be weakened. One can go very far in this path and still have doubts. I read a diary, Mother Teresa's diary, quite advanced in life, and she says very touching. She says, I pray and pray and pray into the darkness and there's no reply. So that can happen. In contrast to this, you have a second path that is the path of direct experience. Let's call it the path of the mystics. In Sanskrit we can use the Sanskrit term the yogic path, where we are told no, not a question of belief, it's a question of experience. As Vedanta said, religion is realization, and this experience is open to everybody. We can all have that experience, and not only can we have that experience, we must. That's the whole point of human life. That's why we are here. And how do you get this experience? There are practices. You sit in this way, you breathe in this way, you focus in this way, you visualize, meditate in this way, and eventually you will see for yourself. The claims of spirituality can be verified in our personal experience. So an experiential way. A classic example here would be the Patanjali Yoga Sutras. So they don't start with any demand for belief in anything. You just have to have a working belief that there's something in this. Let me investigate it. And the point would be actually to experience it for yourself. But notice even here also, if one were to be a little bit of a devil's advocate, try to find fault here. Also notice the weakness is these mystical experiences. These are not public experiences. These are not shared experiences. These are not easily available experiences, and that's exactly why it takes so